This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. One thing that everybody can say about the fires that hit Los Angeles is that we all knew that one day something would come and destroy Los Angeles. And how did we know that? Well, we knew that because they've been telling us that for years. If you haven't been paying attention, I'll catch you up on all of the movies, all of the predictive programming, which has shown Los Angeles being destroyed. And of course, once Los Angeles is destroyed, we should start looking elsewhere because more cities are going to be destroyed. Specifically, I am referencing New York City, because what we know about these movies is that predictive programming is real. If you're new to all this and you actually believe that people like James Cameron come up with these ideas for movies like Terminator, or George Lucas was just sleeping one night and came up with the idea for Star Wars, that would be incorrect. These people who are members of secret societies, who at their core are Luciferian, who worship Satan, they know what's coming because this is all planned. They show us these things through what we deem as fiction, as movies. We go to the movies thinking we're being entertained, but we're really being programmed. Hence the term programming when we watch television or movies. They used to refer to it as programming. Guess what they're programming? You. And they've been doing this over and over and over again. You'll notice the repetition and the pattern. One of the things I've pointed out on my channel for years that I always seem to get in trouble for, because it's an easy way to wake people up, is showing you repetition and pattern. Your brain doesn't see it at first, but when you see it put in front of you and you start critically thinking, you start saying to yourself, yeah, this is not a random coincidence. It's not a random coincidence that there are so many movies about Los Angeles, California being destroyed. Just like it's not a coincidence that there's so many movies about alien invasions, right? We could expect that in the near future, possibly 2025 with Project Bluebeam. There is a reason for this. People didn't just start writing these movies about Los Angeles going back to the 1930s being destroyed by an earthquake, a tsunami, a meteor. They didn't just do this because they were all creative and woke up and said, wouldn't it be crazy if I wrote a movie about Los Angeles being destroyed? Because somebody would tap them on the shoulder and say, well, that's already been done. If you're an artist and you're creative, why would you make a movie about the same exact thing that's already been done, going back, again, to the 1930s? That's like somebody coming out and saying they're going to make a movie called Boulder. And the plot of the movie is going to be about a guy who's down on his luck, who lives in Philadelphia and gets a shot at the world champion in a boxing match and goes the distance with him. Oh yeah, because that's the plot of Rocky. If I told you that there's somebody made a movie called Boulder, which is a synonym for rock for anybody out there that's wondering. If I told you that they made a movie with the same exact plot with a different name, you would say, that's ridiculous. They already made that movie. It's called Rocky, right? But nobody seems to notice it with these alien movies, with these devastation, natural disaster movies that just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. So let's take a look at how they've programmed us over the years, showing us that eventually they would come to destroy Los Angeles. We could start with some of these, even B-level films. Don't forget about a lot of these cheesy B-level films that still have a lot of money put behind them. We have Eruption LA. Where will you be when everything erupts, right? About a potential volcano going off in LA. We have Destruction, Los Angeles, where you can see meteors coming out of the sky. You have movies like Battle of Los Angeles, Disaster LA, LA Apocalypse. There's a complete list of destruction movies on LA, from monster attacks to climatic events to geologic events to infections, from movies like Night at the Comet, which is a movie that I did see from the 1980s, where all of a sudden everybody just vanishes in thin air. They wake up and nobody's in the city anymore. It's just an empty city. We have movies with alien attacks, space rockets, superhero movies where Los Angeles is the backdrop that is eventually destroyed. Even in films like The Day After Tomorrow, which most people know for occurring on the East Coast, it eventually leads to the West Coast, where the West Coast and Los Angeles are destroyed. There's specifically a scene where a tornado goes right through Hollywood. You know, rapid winds, kind of like they're having right now. Even The Weeknd, who I've exposed so many times over the years, most recently with his concert that he had where he was showing you CERN and the portal and summoning of the spirits. I mean, this guy is in the loop. He didn't write a movie, Escape from LA, because he was looking to escape from LA. And of course, we've had these feature films about earthquakes, from 10.0 earthquake to San Andreas, right? Starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And is it a coincidence that while these fires are going on in Los Angeles, that we had a 3.7 magnitude earthquake that hit up near San Francisco? We had an earthquake hit up there a few weeks ago where a tsunami warning was put into place just a few months after they had these tsunami training drills up in Northern California and Oregon and Washington. And don't forget that Los Angeles and Malibu are situated near active fault lines. And that brings me to this predictive programming, Escape from LA. And as you heard, the song from The Weeknd, Escape from LA, is not based on the movie Escape from LA. This is all coded. The snake is back. How interesting. Escape from LA happens to have the word "the snake is back" with the one eye symbolism in the eye patch. And of course, who's that snake that just is on his way back into office as all this is going down? The guy who says, "You knew I was a snake before you let me in," coming in for his second term. So the snake is indeed back. And the plot of that film is it took place in the year 2013, and the United States president is exiling all citizens who don't conform to his hyper-conservative views to Los Angeles, which became an island after a huge earthquake. But when the president's daughter nabs the detonator to her dad's apocalyptic weapon and sneaks into LA to be with the rebel leader she loves, the government taps commando turned crook Kurt Russell's character Snake Plissken to retrieve the young woman, and if he doesn't succeed quickly, he'll be executed. Notice some of the things in there that should stand out. Hyper-conservative views to Los Angeles if you don't conform. And everybody is escaping LA, which was once this liberal hive mind cesspool where all of these people under full-on mind control had liberal, crazy ideologies. Now all those people are being run out of Los Angeles. And who are they calling on to come in and save the day? Who are they begging to come to save Los Angeles and California? Well, they're calling on that guy who supposedly has hyper-conservative views. Here is an interesting trailer from that film that I'm going to play for you. And I want you to just pay attention to the beginning where they say things like no talking, no smoking, no red meat, no freedom of religion, and marriages must be approved by the state. All starting to look like, what we're headed towards, isn't it?
For everyone's enjoyment, we'd like to remind you of the following rules. No red meat, no freedom of religion, and remember, all marriages must be approved by the Department of Health. Failure to obey these rules will result in immediate loss of citizenship and deportation to the island of Los Angeles.
Your rules are really beginning to annoy me.
He ran a psycho profile on him using a database of 5 million sociopathic personalities. He hit the bottom of the curve.
This town loves a winner.
Man, what an interesting trailer. Who would have known back in the 1990s when this movie came out that no red meat would be something that the government was pushing on everyone? At the time when this film came out, there was no notion whatsoever about no red meat. There were people who didn't like meat, who were vegans or vegetarians, who picked not to eat meat because they don't like the taste of it or they just weren't interested in consuming it. It grossed them out, which is fine by everybody out there. Everyone has their right to decide those things, what they want to put in their body, unless, of course, it's a magic potion. Then you don't have the right to choose. But nobody had heard of a thing about no red meat. But all of a sudden, right, we're all hearing a lot about how none of us should be eating meat, shouldn't be allowed to eat meat, and how there's a carbon emission that comes with eating the meat. So you may have noticed how Los Angeles and Malibu and Hollywood and Anaheim were actually separated from California. And of course, like I read earlier, the plot is that the island is where people get exiled to, right? And it's interesting that the film, like John Carpenter, he wrote the script, he wrote this film, he directed this film. And I just covered John Carpenter recently in a video talking about all that bizarre fog that we're seeing going on around us and the mist, right? Stephen King and John Carpenter's two big-time Hollywood people, two big-time writers that everybody knows about, John Carpenter from Halloween, They Live, which I'll get into in a second. So many movies, right? And of course, they just happen to just write pretty much the same exact story, The Fog and The Mist. And nobody called each other's agents and said, hey, that's copyright, right? I mean, it's like if you sing the song Beat It by Michael Jackson, don't you think you're going to get a copyright for it? If you try to produce it and sell it, right? They get money for that. You can't steal somebody's idea or work. But in this case, we're told that this is art, right? Well, it's very similar art. And they like to say that sometimes art imitates life, or maybe life really is just imitating what they're calling art, which is nothing more than spellcasting. And again, John Carpenter is somebody who knows what's going on because he's on the inside. He wrote They Live. He directed They Live, a movie that shows you what's actually going on, right? It shows you the mind control. A lot of people see a movie like They Live and they go, wow, I can relate to that. I could see we've got one that could see, right? I've referenced that many times. A lot of truthers have referenced the movie They Live, but John Carpenter isn't trying to wake you up. He's just showing it to you in a fictional movie. He's one of them. We've seen him holding up the hand over the eye, doing the all-seeing eye symbolism. And of course, Escape from New York is what I'm getting to, because Escape from LA is a sequel to Escape from New York. And we know they like to do things in reverse, according to Aleister Crowley's law of reversal, which is why things like the moonwalk, walking backwards, and backmasking exist. It is a part of occult practices. Escape from New York is the first film that John Carpenter made out of this franchise, and Escape from LA was the second. And the plot of this one was, in the future, in 1997, a world war, a major war between the United States and the Soviet Union is concluding, and the entire island of Manhattan has been converted into a giant maximum security prison. When Air Force One is hijacked and crashed into the island, the president is taken hostage by a group of inmates. A former special forces soldier turned criminal is recruited to retrieve the president, who is held hostage in exchange for his own freedom. And I'll show you some clips from the trailer here. You'll even notice how they, everybody out there knows that they love to get those towers on screen as often as they can. They love to get the towers, and they love to show us the statue of ISIS, the Statue of Liberty, demolished on the ground very often in films too. So take a look at this trailer and then think about what's currently going on in New York.
New York, 1997. The entire city is a walled maximum security prison. The bridges are mined. The rivers are patrolled. And the United States Police Force has everything under control.
Now, I'm going in.
John Carpenter's Escape from New York, the high adventure of the future.
So that's interesting, right? Especially since they talk about New York as a police state, something I've covered a lot over the last couple of years. Remember back to 2024 in March, National Guard, state police will patrol the subways and check bags. They brought in the National Guard. People are thinking that we need a police state in places like New York because crime is out of control. This is all stuff the government is doing themselves, paying people to do these ridiculous crimes in New York City, like punch people in the face randomly, and we're told they go to jail for 20 years and their motive was nothing. They just wanted to punch a stranger and get thrown in prison for years on end. Of course, these things are all make-believe. It doesn't mean the events aren't happening. The government's funding it. The government is behind all of this chaos that you see. It's organized chaos, and the answer is order out of chaos that they want to bring in. So very interesting plot there. But there's also a ton of movies we have to keep in mind about the destruction of New York, because we just saw Los Angeles get destroyed, and we've seen so much programming telling us that that was going to happen, and now it looks like it is happening, and more could potentially be to come. We should probably turn our attention to New York, because remember, they did do an earthquake experiment just outside of New York in North Jersey that actually did hit parts of New York, where they felt the after effects, the shocks from that earthquake just a few months ago, within the last year or so. And potentially they're telling us that, well, big things could be coming on the East Coast. We see movies like The Day After Tomorrow, where New York City is destroyed, right? We've seen tsunamis, the same exact thing, right? The same as the California, Los Angeles movies. Here's New York. You got tsunamis hitting New York. You've got quote unquote meteors hitting New York. Movies like Deep Impact. You've got movies like, or TV series like Earthquake in New York, which is about the same exact thing, an earthquake in New York. You've got Category 7, The End of the World, the biggest storm ever. And some of these are obviously just B-level type productions, mini-series that aired on ABC, CBS, but they're worth noting because it's repetition, right? Repetition with storms, weather modification, right? You got this movie Deluge, a 1933 disaster film, starts with a series of earthquakes along the Pacific coast, and the danger only escalates from there. The tremors create a series of tsunamis that somehow make it all the way around the world to flood New York. You've got films like Meteor, right? You've got films like The Fifth Wave, where aliens create tsunamis. Movies like Independence Day, where buildings like the Empire State Building get blown up from quote-unquote aliens. Watchmen, Failsafe, which is about a U.S. nuclear attack. Planet of the Apes, you could see that repetitive thing of the Statue of Liberty being dismantled, just like in The Day After Tomorrow. Movies like The Knowing, where the planet is wiped out, and they specifically show the destruction of New York City not surviving. So do you see the pattern here? Do you see the theme? And you might say, well, okay, so what? There's a theme of movies where Los Angeles is destroyed and New York is destroyed. And if your brain isn't churning and saying, why are they all writing this same exact plot? They can't come up with anything else. Are you just going to give them the benefit of the doubt? That these production studios, as if you went there and you were like, hey, I've got an idea. How about a tsunami hits New York? Like they wouldn't shut the door in your face and say, well, it's been done 100 times, right? It's been done 1,000,000 times. It's been done over and over and over again, right? Kind of like the reason that you go to school and you're taught the same nonsense over and over and over again. It's a form of programming and conditioning. So you might see that and say, well, even if they're saying there's going to be a tsunami or an earthquake or a wildfire, I mean, they can't do anything like that. You know, the wildfire can actually start by a person, but they can't start an earthquake or a tsunami. Well, think again. And I've covered this 1,000,000 times, and I'll cover it 1,000,000,000,000 more. Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine, not fictional, factual. There are earthquake machines. This is also factual. Weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. Who is that written by? No, it wasn't written by Stephen King. No. It was written by the United States Air Force in the year 1996. And the last I checked, the calendar says 2025. So how could they do these types of things? Well, let me show you.
Half hour before the earthquake in China. It's called earthquake lights. And that's something that looks similar to the northern lights, and it's something that has happened before other earthquakes, but no one knows what it is, what causes it. It's being studied to see if it could be some kind of warning sign that could be used to predict big earthquakes. But look at that. Nobody knows what causes that.
That's fascinating.
And we've seen reports of those for decades, really. But no one's actually caught it on tape until just now.
In 1983, I did radiotomography with 30 watts, looking for oil in the ground. I found 26 oil wells over a 9-state area, and 100% of the time was accurate with just 30 watts of power beaming straight into solid rock. HARP uses 1 billion watts beamed straight into the ionosphere for experiments. Picture these strings on the piano as layers of the earth. Each one has its own frequency. What we used to do is beam radio waves into the ground, and it would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's natural gas. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with 1 billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake.
When HARP's broadcast array sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere, the waves get reflected back down and pass through the earth and ocean. 3.6 million watts of ELF waves were purposely or accidentally aimed at an already unstable fault line, cause a tremendous earthquake.
What does it take to trigger an earthquake? The right signal coming in when the pressures are already built up and they're at their threshold.
So everybody out there should be seeing this programming and realizing that these people are not making these films because they're smarter than you, they're more talented than you, they're more creative than you. People getting the door shut in their face in Hollywood and thinking to themselves, man, maybe I'm just not good enough. No. That's because this is a mind control operation. That's what Hollywood is. The actors are government assets. They work for the government. They are deeply trained in mind control, just like the news anchors are trained in the Tavistock Institutes. They are master manipulators of mind control. They are putting you under a hypnosis when you watch the news, when you watch these films, and they are spell casting on you. None of these people are better. None of them are more talented. And guess what? When you start seeing the pattern like all these films, just think to yourself, if you were on the outside and you said, I wanted to be, I want to write a movie. Well, if I told you, hey, I want to write a movie, and I knocked on your door, and I was your neighbor, and you said, okay, come on in, call. And I came in, I said, hey, I want to write a movie. And you say, really? All right, what are you going to write about? And I said, all right, it's a crazy idea, but how about a tsunami hits New York? What? Call. That's been done a million times, would probably be your response. I'd say, no, really? I don't know. I'm going to still go to Hollywood, and I'm going to try to pitch this idea to him. And I walk out. You'd say, oh, man, well, first you'd say, what's happened to Call? He's sold out, because that would never happen in a million years. But you'd probably say, I guess I'll just wait for him to come home, reject it, and hopefully I could cheer him back up, because there's no way in a trillion years that they would say, hey, it's a great idea, because it's been done a million times, right? That's what you would say if your neighbor came to you, or anyone you know came to you with an idea like that, or like Rocky I mentioned earlier, or an Alien movie, which are all the same exact plots. Do you see that it's conditioning? Nobody was coming up with these ideas in 1933 about tsunamis hitting New York, California, earthquakes hitting year after year after year, tornadoes hitting, sharknadoes hitting. The destruction of these cities is the key element of these plots by natural disasters that, guess what, aren't so natural. This is no different than a terrorist attack. They're using weather modification and weather control to commit mass genocide, all protected under the umbrella of climate change. And they don't think that you're smart enough to notice their patterns, or you're clever enough to get past their walls that they've created of defense, which is people calling you crazy, calling you a conspiracy theorist. They don't think you have the endurance to endure those things and to push through it and to go forward and say, I don't care if these people think I'm crazy. I know that this is the truth, and I'm going to continue fighting for the truth. They want you to wave a white flag and go along with their insane agenda and wait for them to come to your door with a man-made tornado or a man-made earthquake or a man-made tsunami or anything else. They want you to cower down and not show people the actual truth. People at first will think this stuff is crazy. They'll think it's crazy because they've been trained to think it's crazy. My hope and my goal, because over the years I've proven that I can do it, is to wake people up by showing them this pattern, by just snapping them out of it for a second with common sense and basic logic. Of all these films about Los Angeles, you ever think once, going back to 1933, why there's so many movies, where people just have a fetish with putting Los Angeles underwater or lighting it on fire or separating it from California itself or New York City? Huh? You ever think once about that? No, you haven't. Well, now it's time to start thinking about it, because this is all part of their plan. And the predictive programming proves it. And guess what? To this day, last I checked, the predictive programming never proves wrong, because every time one of these suspicious events happens, we can go back to movies beforehand, like Outbreak or Contagion, or all those films that came out about what occurred 5 years ago. And now we can look back at all those movies about natural disasters that weren't so natural, wiping out Los Angeles. And if you think for a second, well, the people in Los Angeles, they're actors. All these actors lost their homes. You're telling me they're in these movies and then, they don't realize, and they didn't lose anything. Little hint to you. All of these guys are government operatives, these guys and gals in Hollywood. They didn't lose a thing. They were told, look, this is the plan, and they've known for a long time. I guarantee you their homes were empty. They didn't sell them on the market because they were just given our tax money for the value of the home, probably times 5, and told to relocate. But in return, of course, They need to go on TV. They need to say that their house burned to the ground. They need to cry on Instagram. So they look like victims. So it looks more real. So it looks like they weren't in on it. That's what's occurred in Hollywood. They've known this was coming. This is why they set up Hollywood 2.0 out in Las Vegas. They've already stopped production in Hollywood on filming things. You think that they're going to stop production for a long time? You know how important that mind control programming is? You know how important it is to keep you distracted with pointless Netflix shows and Paramount movies? It's very important. So Hollywood's not going anywhere. They're just relocating. They've told you this for years. They're going to Vegas. And now these people are going to pretend like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. They've only got 10 homes. And don't worry, they didn't lose $10 million on their house that was burned. The regular civilians did. The regular civilians lost their homeowner's insurance. The actors might pretend like they lost it too, but they're given money directly from the government because they work for the government. They're all in on it, folks. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you share this video. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.